People don't treat you based on your value. They treat you based on what you repeatedly allow. Most people carry a quiet belief that if they are patient enough, understanding enough, consistently kind enough, that will eventually be reflected back to them. That tolerance is a kind of emotional investment with a guaranteed return. But in human dynamics, silence is rarely interpreted as kindness. It is interpreted as permission. Today, we're going to look at why we stay quiet during small slights, the hidden trap of being the easygoing person, and how the dynamic around you quietly shifts without you ever having to start a fight. There is a moment most people know but rarely name. A friend changes the dinner plans without asking. A coworker takes credit for a minor idea. A comment lands too casually for how it actually felt. Yet and you notice it. You notice it clearly. And then, almost before you finish noticing, a quiet, internal negotiation begins. It's not worth the drama. They're probably just having a bad day. I may be being too sensitive. And so you let it go. Not because it didn't matter, but because something inside you calculated, quickly, automatically, that the cost of addressing it was higher than the cost of absorbing it. That calculation, that moment. That is what this is about. Let me know in the comments. What was the last small thing you absorbed because it just wasn't worth the drama? You might be surprised how specific the memory is. When you stay silent during a small slight, you aren't just keeping the peace. You are calibrating expectations. You are showing someone where the line is, by demonstrating that for now, there isn't one. The people around you are not analyzing your behavior. They are simply responding to it. And what they learn over time is how far the space extends. Not through deliberate calculation, not through malice, but through the most basic mechanism of human behavior. People move into the space available to them. What you repeatedly allow becomes social instruction. This is the part that tends to create resistance, because it can sound like blame. It isn't. The more precise observation is this: tolerance is not just a personality trait, it is a signal, and signals shape behavior in others, whether or not that was ever the intention. You are not wrong to choose harmony. You are not failing when you prioritize stability. Your nervous system understood silence as the safer option, and it chose accordingly. But the question worth sitting with is not why you did that. It is what you were protecting when you did. Because tolerance, when you trace it carefully, tends to protect specific things. It protects the relationship from rupture. It protects the atmosphere from tension. It protects your sense of being someone who doesn't cause problems. And underneath all of that, most consistently, it protects you from a particular kind of uncertainty. The uncertainty of what happens if you say something. What if they get defensive? What if they pull back? What if the relationship shifts and doesn't return to what it was? The nervous system doesn't wait to find out. It solves for those questions preemptively. It chooses silence, not because silence is what you want, but because silence is what feels survivable. Yet here is what tends to stay hidden until much later. The pattern doesn't stay static. It drifts. A small discomfort gets absorbed. The behavior continues. The same thing happens again, slightly larger. It gets absorbed again. And at each point, the range of what feels tolerable quietly expands. Not because your values changed, but because the baseline shifted so gradually that no single moment felt like the moment to address it. This is why resentment often arrives at a strange time, not immediately after something difficult, but later, quietly, almost without a clear triggering event, because it isn't responding to one thing. It is responding to the accumulated weight of many absorbed moments stacked silently on top of each other. That weight is not evidence of weakness. It is evidence of how long the protection strategy has been running. There is also something else happening beneath the surface. When someone oversteps and your internal dialogue immediately moves to minimize it, you are not just ignoring the other person. You are arguing with yourself on their behalf. You are taking their side against your own discomfort before they've even had the chance to respond. And when that becomes the consistent pattern, something quietly shifts. They are no longer in a relationship with you. They are in a relationship with a version of you that doesn't appear to have needs, a version that absorbs, adjusts, and smooths things over. That version is not more likable. It is just less visible. Now here is where most people get this wrong, and it starts with a word. Oh, I'm just an easygoing person. I don't like conflict. I'm the patient one. These descriptions function as an identity shield. They reframe self-silencing as a moral position, as evidence of maturity, of emotional sophistication, of being above petty friction. And that framing is effective precisely because it closes the door on further examination. If being easygoing is simply who you are, there is no signal being sent. There is no calculation running beneath the surface. There is just personality. But that framing is partial, because easygoing can describe someone who is genuinely at ease, and it can also describe someone who is bracing. Those two states can look identical from the outside. They feel entirely different on the inside. Yet if you're starting to recognize that your easygoing nature might actually be something closer to hypervigilance, a quiet scanning for the moment someone might leave if you finally said no, and you want to understand that pattern more deeply, subscribe to this channel. That's exactly what we navigate here, every week. Being respectful towards someone does not require accepting disrespect from them. Those are not two ends of the same scale. One is about how you treat others. The other is about the information you provide about how you are to be treated. True kindness is honest. The kind of tolerance that comes from fear, from anticipating the cost of disagreement before it has even been asked, is not kindness. It is a performance of a version of yourself that doesn't fully exist, as maintained to preserve a version of a relationship that isn't fully real. Standards are not aggression. They are not coldness. They are not the decision to become difficult. They are information. Behavioral information that tells people where you end and where they begin. Without that information, people are navigating your space blind and defaulting to what has worked before. What has worked before is what you previously allowed. Here is the broader pattern, if you zoom out far enough to see it. Human beings are not primarily rule followers in relationships. They are feedback processors. They respond to what they encounter repeatedly and adjust accordingly, which means that what shifts a dynamic is rarely a confrontation. It is rarely a dramatic declaration of new terms or a single moment of finally standing up for yourself. It is quieter than that. It is the moment when something that was previously absorbed is not absorbed, when the signal changes, when the feedback is different, and the people around you receive different information, and the calibration begins, slowly, without announcement, to shift. When you stop tolerating a specific behavior, one of two things tends to happen. Either the person adjusts because they value the connection, or they don't, because what they valued was the access. Both outcomes are a form of clarity. Two thoughts tend to accompany this kind of recognition. The first is, I should have said something sooner. The second is, I'm too nice, and people take advantage of that. Both carry more judgment than the situation requires. You didn't stay silent because you were failing, yet you stayed silent because something in you understood silence as the safer option. That is a learned response to a real experience, not a character flaw. And too nice is not quite the right frame. Niceness and self-erasure are not the same thing. One is a genuine orientation toward others. The other is a strategy for maintaining approval that has been running so long, it started to feel like personality. Recognizing the strategy does not mean abandoning the warmth. It means separating the two things that got quietly folded together. So just one question to sit with, if it feels useful. Where in your life has your tolerance quietly become someone else's instruction? Not with urgency, not with self-criticism, just with curiosity. What you allow over time becomes what people understand as the boundary of what is possible with you. That is not a failure, that is just how patterns work.